Tamriel, a continent whose inhabitants all have diverse and interesting histories, some better known than others. With many races of elves, humans, and beasts alike, it's hard to keep all their histories straight. It is for this reason that I'm making this video. I'm going to be attempting to explain the races as concisely and with as much brevity as possible. I want to preface this video by stating that I will be referring to the elvish races by terms such as wood elves and high elves, rather than Altmer and Bosmer, as the latter terms can get confusing when said frequently and mixed in with each other, as I was easily confused when I was new to the Elder Scrolls lore, so I will be doing that in order to make it easier for any newbies to understand as well. I will also not be covering the irrelevant races, for example the Orma, who were the human race native to Blackmarsh. Seeing that this race no longer exists and has little to no legacy, I will not cover them or any races like them. I will, however, cover the extinct or mostly extinct races that did leave a legacy. We should start with those who hold the oldest claim to Tamriel as their homes, that is, the beast folk or beasts. There are a lot of different races of beasts, but many do not exist anymore, so I will focus on the ones who still do. The Khajiit, or desert dwellers, come from elsewhere. No, not elsewhere, but elsewhere, the province with an incredibly stupid name. Some sources say that the Khajiit were already native to the continent by the time the first elves or men had arrived. However, others, including the Khajiit themselves, say that their ancestors were the Elder Elves, like all the other elvish races. However, there are significant problems with this theory, so I will personally lean towards the former. It should also be noted that there are many different shapes of the Khajiit, so some may consider them different races, but that is beyond the scope of this video. The Argonians are the reptilian natives of the province of Blackmarsh. They may be one of the few true native races of Tamriel, as they were created by a race of sapient trees known as the Hist. Like the Khajiit, there are also many different forms of the Argonians. These differences, however, are determined by the Hist tree rather than genetics. The Elvish races can all be traced back to one Proto-Elvish race, known as the Aldmer, or the Elder Elves. The exact origin of the Elder Elves is disputed. Some believe that the Elder Elves came from a continent known as Aldmeris, but other sources, including the Elder Scrolls themselves, dispute this, stating that the continent is pure fiction. Regardless, what is certain is that the Elder Elves first inhabited the Somerset Isles, and further migrations to Tamriel came from those same isles. In the first migration, the Elder Elves immigrated to the province of Valenwood. These elves became known as the Bosmer, the Wood Elves. The order of migrations after this point gets a little murky, so I'm just going to put my faith in my sources and what makes the most sense, both with regards to geography and chronology. Still, take the order of the migrations after this point with a grain of salt. The second migration from the Isles of Somerset went to the province of Morrowind. These elves became known as the Dwemer, the Deep Elves. The Deep Elves also settled in Skyrim, High Rock, and Hammerfell from Morrowind. The third migration, which was sparked by religious conflict on the Somerset Isles, also went towards Morrowind. These elves, through even more religious conflict, separated into the Chimer, the Changed Elves, and the Orsimer, the Orcs, the latter of whom had a huge diaspora, settling various parts of Tamriel in small communities. The Changed Elves would later be cursed and turned into the Dunmer, the Dark Elves. I should mention that there is some, although little, conflict regarding the relationship between the Orcs and the Deep Elves, and some propose that they might have closer ancestry than most suspect. However, that is not to be covered in the scope of this video, and is the opinion of a minority. The next migrations are unknown as to in what order they occurred, but there were migrations to Cyrodiil and to Skyrim. The elves who migrated to Cyrodiil became the Aelids, the Wild Elves, and the elves who migrated to Skyrim became the Falmer, the Snow Elves. The Wild Elves are thought to have also had communities in Hammerfell, High Rock, Valenwood, Elsewhere, and Blackrock, although this is up for debate and is thought to be overly generous. It is even harder to tell the extent of where the Snow Elves lived, however, as most of their structures were destroyed by the Nords as part of an extermination campaign. So we'll just stick to where we know that they were, Skyrim. The elves who remained on the Somerset Isles became known as the Altmer, the High Elves. It is believed that the High Elves are closest to the Elder Elves both culturally and genetically. The human races of Tamriel are not so clean-cut as the Elvish races, as there are quite a few proto-races. However, for conciseness, I will keep this section to its bare minimum. Many of the human races, like the elves, have diversified over time. Most, in fact, did this. All the others either assimilated or went extinct. To start, the Bretons are natives of High Rock. They are a mixture of the Elder Elves and the Needs. The Needs' origin is disputed, but for this video, irrelevant. All you need to know is that the Needs are the ancestors of the Bretons, the human ancestors. The Reachmen are thought to have come from the same origin as the Bretons, being a mixture of man and elf. However, they do not consider themselves Bretons, and Bretons do not consider themselves Reachmen. Confusing, I know. It should also be noted that the Forsworn are a faction of Reachmen, and not their own race. The origin of the Nords is not as heavily disputed as the Needs, and it is thought that they came from a continent known as Atmora. They have lived in Skyrim long enough to consider the province their native land. The Snow Elves considered the province their native land too. However, the Nords held a campaign to eliminate the Snow Elves from Skyrim and were ultimately successful, for all intents and purposes. It should be noted that the Snow Elves should not be thought of as victims of the Nords, as the war between the Nords and the Snow Elves started with the Snow Elves attacking the Nordic city Sarthal unprovoked at night and killing all but 3 of its inhabitants. This led to the war between the Nords and the Snow Elves and ended with most of the Snow Elves being killed, with the vast majority of the surviving Snow Elves, through a deal with the Dwemer, turning into the modern-day Falmer that you can find in the Dwemer ruins throughout Skyrim. Recall that the Dwemer are the Deep Elves. Imperials are the natives of Cyrodiil. They also trace their ancestry to the Needs, similarly to the Bretons, but they also trace a bit of their ancestry to the early Nords. The Imperials were originally subjugated by the Wild Elves, and the Wild Elves ended up influencing Imperial culture significantly in this process. However, the Imperials eventually rebelled and launched an extermination campaign against the Wild Elves. Some believe this campaign to have been completely successful, while others believe that the Wild Elves survive, but only in small, isolated communities in the forest. It should be noted that they haven't been recorded in being seen in over a millennium, so make of that what you will. The Red Guards are interesting in that they are not believed to have any connection with the homeland of the other human races, Atmora, but instead came from the continent of Yukuda. It is disputed why, but regardless of why, the continent of Yukuda ended up sinking for the most part, leaving only a few small islands behind. As you might imagine, the sinking of an entire continent led to a lot of refugees. The refugees ended up sailing to Tamriel and settling in the province of Hammerfell. So that would be the conclusion of this video. Depending on how well this video does, I may or may not make more Skyrim lore content. I made this video because I felt that other videos on YouTube simply aren't concise enough and have other problems as well. If you want to show your support for this type of content from my channel, then please do the general gist of leave a like, comment, and subscribe. In any case, though, if you watched the whole video, I want to thank you a lot for that, because this took a lot longer than I thought it would. I didn't think it'd take more than a few hours to make, but the script alone took that long, and then putting the video together was a lot more difficult than it needed to be because the software that I used was one that I won't use again, let's put it like that. But yeah, thank you for watching and have a good one.